All right, let's
Gonna
see.
be
Are
good.
we on? I think we might be on. It says initializing on my end. Okay, here we are live and ready to go. Hello, everyone. How are you?
Hello.
Hi, hi everyone.
Hello, hello. All right, I see some guests coming in right now. We have Annette and Julie. Welcome, welcome. I see Kristen joining us. So thank you everyone for logging in today. We are Talent Collective, and for those of you who aren't members of Talent Collective, we are a community of women in the talent acquisition space who come together for networking and professional development opportunities. And really exciting fireside chat speakers. And so really excited that we have our first kickoff virtual one today. With some extremely talented women who have risen to the top in TA and global positions. So real quick, just a quick note, if everyone who is an attendee today could put your name and your LinkedIn profile in the chat. We think this is a great opportunity for anyone here to network with each other, say hello, and please be involved in the chat. If you have questions that come up that you want to ask the speakers, we'll circle back around to those at the very end. But please feel free to chime in on the chat. And then, yeah, just a huge thank you to our three speakers today. So we have Geri Kalinsky at Warner Media Group. We have Veronica Salcido, and we have Danielle Mathis. So thank you so much for all being here. And sorry, Veronica is at Multiverse and Danielle is at Clary. These women have essentially had just such impressive careers in talent acquisition, very different stories. I'm excited to hear from all of you today. So yeah, I'd love to pass around the mic just real quickly. We'll do a brief intro for each of you. We can start off with Geri and then go to Veronica and then go to Danielle. Then after that, we'll go through each of you, really hear in depth about your journey in talent acquisition. I have some questions to ask you as well. Then when we're wrapped up with that, at the end, we'll do a Q&A from the audience. So Geri, would you like to kick us off with a brief intro?
Thank you so much, Krista. So nice to be here today. Really excited about today's conversation. As Krista mentioned, my name is Geri Kalinsky, and I'm the global head of talent acquisition at Warner Music Group. Been at the company for 6.5 years. Most of my experience has been in talent acquisition in a variety of different industries. I've also been a people partner a couple of times in my career, so I've taken a couple of different paths, but came back to talent acquisition.
Very nice. Thank you, Geri. Veronica.
Hi, I'm Veronica Salcido. I go by V, and I am the head of global talent for Multiverse. We do modern professional apprenticeships as an alternative route to college and university, and providing more equitable access to the best careers. And I have spent almost 2 decades in talent acquisition, which is really crazy to think about. And have spent a lot of my career in scaling startups through IPOs, acquisitions, and have seen the evolution of what talent acquisition team looks like, does at multiple stages of a company. And happy to be here.
Thank you, Veronica. Thank you. All right, and Danielle.
Hello, I am head of global talent acquisition at Clary, which is a B2B software that helps revenue leaders all the way up to the boardroom see if they are going to meet, beat, or miss their revenue numbers. So quite an awesome software to have for anybody in the sales side. And I have been both agency side and in-house for the last 12 years in talent, and then had a previous life, like everyone on this call. I was in marketing for a time as well. And I'm a mom of 2 kiddos and a dog mom of 1, travel adventurer, and just super grateful to be here alongside all these powerhouses in talent.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all. That was a great brief introduction. So Geri, we'll start with you. I would love to hear a more in-depth overview of your career journey and trajectory. So tell us about it.
All right, sounds good. I was actually thinking this morning about what do I want to talk about. There's a lot of interesting things to mention. So I originally thought I was going to be a doctor. That was my path. Second year into my education, I went to University of Pennsylvania. Second year in, I was like, I don't think I'm cut out for this. I wasn't doing well in some of the classes that I probably should have done well in. So I ended up becoming a psychology major, which I know a lot of people do, going into HR, and I found myself really fascinated with the whole field of human resources. It wasn't even called human resources when I went to school, but I'd rather not talk about that part. So, got my first job in HR at a company called Liz Claiborne, which is still in existence, but it was a higher end sort of fashion company at that time. Very interested in the fashion space. Realized a year in that I didn't really want to work in the fashion industry and HR anymore. So I was very lucky enough to land an opportunity in HR at MTV Networks, which is no longer called that. It's actually called Viacom Media Networks. Grew my career there. I was there for 9 years and actually had my kids while I was there. And found myself wanting to have a little bit more of a balanced, at least at that time, a little bit more of a balance in the workday. So when I came back from maternity leave with my second child, I actually went over to work for NYU in talent acquisition. So I had started to build a career in talent acquisition. So I was in a university environment, and it was a great experience, just understanding how a university works from an operational perspective. It was really, really interesting. And the work balance piece was a little bit easier to have in the university environment. And then I decided I wanted back into the corporate space again because my kids were getting a little older and I was itching for the faster pace environment again. So I worked for a couple of interesting organizations, a digital media company for about 2 years. And then I landed an opportunity to work for Horizon Media, great media agency, continued to grow my career there, and got a call. I had always had this passion for kind of marrying my professional experience with my personal interests. Not to say that I wasn't doing that at all, but music, like many of us, music is a huge passion. And I always had this sort of dream of working in the music industry, and was just very lucky to get a phone call out of the blue on a day that I was at my company, just wasn't a great day. I guess it's the timing of a phone call.
Yeah.
Took the phone call, and it led to having the privilege of joining Warner Music Group in 2017. So I share some of this to say that for me personally, it was very intentional to work in a lot of different industries. I wanted to have as much exposure as possible. So I could really say that I'm a true talent generalist. Was actually a people partner for part of my time at Horizon Media. So I sort of took a little bit of a different path. And that's actually when I realized I wanted to go back into talent acquisition. So that was the day I got the phone call from Warner.
Great.
But I feel that I've become a stronger professional having seen many different facets of HR. I think sometimes with talent acquisition, and obviously I'm in this space and I love it, it can be a little bit siloed. And I think that I've been able to be a better partner to the business because I understand the full life cycle of talent. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that's a little bit about my journey.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I resonate with that. I'm more passionate about TA, but I always say I know enough about HR to be dangerous. And I think it serves me well. But I don't want to be doing employee relations all day. I don't want to be looking at laws all day. So I'm in the right spot.
Exactly.
So Geri, when we typically talk about career trajectories and rising in leadership, a lot of times we talk about mentors and what role that mentors have had in people's careers. But for you, what role did coaches specifically play in your career?
Yeah, so I've had mentors, but I think where I've had the most benefit from my career personally has been actually through coaches. So I when I think back about my career, I grew very quickly, particularly when I think about my time at MTV Networks. I got promoted very quickly throughout the time there. Happens a lot in talent acquisition, start as an assistant, and then you're a coordinator, and then you're a recruiter, and then you're a manager. And it was all great. But one thing that I didn't really receive in my earlier career is probably some feedback I should have received around my communication and how people receive me and things like that. So for me, I actually kind of hit my stride a little later in my career.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually in my experience at Horizon Media, which is not that many years ago, that my wonderful head of HR, who's no longer there, she's since moved on, Eileen Benwitt, pulled me aside one day and she said, "You need some coaching. You are very smart, but managing people they're not your friends. You need to think about situational leadership and being more of a servant leader." I mean, I'm thinking literally about those conversations. And no one had ever given me that feedback before. I was this like rising star, doing great work. No one ever pulled me aside to share those insights. So I had a coaching experience at Horizon Media, which was great. Then when I joined Warner Music Group, I had encountered some different types of feedback about my communication. And I had a coach a second time. And I share that to say a couple of reasons. To say, one, I'm much more comfortable being open about that. I think, 15, 20 years ago, I don't know if I would have felt as comfortable being open and vulnerable. So I've learned to be much more vulnerable. And also say it's never too late to have coaching. It's never too late to have it's a gift, honestly, to spend time with someone who's willing to work with you and help you be the best version of yourself. I'm very grateful for that. And like I said, it's never too late.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to share that.
Well, I love that you've had people that cared about you enough to do that for you, because I feel like a lot of what I've seen in corporate America these days is person's just not working out. We give them the feedback and then maybe we give it a second time and then they're out of here, right? But is there actual coaching going on? And you've been lucky enough to have that experience, but you've also been open to that experience, right? I think there's also
exactly. You have to be open to it. Exactly. You have to be open to it. And I think about, and I say this to everybody on the phone, especially if you're looking to continue to grow your career in talent acquisition, the transition from being an individual contributor. I don't love that phrase, but that's the one that comes to mind. I think it diminishes the role. But let's say you're an individual contributor recruiter and you're looking to be a manager of a recruiting team. That's a big transition. And I think sometimes people are promoted into that role too soon because it seems like that's the next step. What else is there? But I will say, I've worked with some amazing people who have chosen to continue to just do amazing work at recruiting and not manage people. And that's great too. It's not the only way to grow a career.
Absolutely. Yeah. You bring up so many great points that I want to dig into more. So you mentioned earlier about hitting your stride in your career, maybe at a different point. So talk to us a little bit more about when you did really hit your stride in your career.
Yeah. I would say it was really from, having the coaching experience that I had in my last company, which was the second year in. So this is 2018. I'm sorry, 2011. Mm-hmm. This is only 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. The light bulb went off for me about being more of a servant leader, not about being directive, the importance of situational leadership. Just because I'm the boss doesn't mean someone's going to do something because I tell them. And that was a really big adjustment for me because, like I said, I hadn't had that feedback before. I just kept doing my thing. More people reporting to me, but I also had some turnover. There were just different things that were happening that I had to look in the mirror and say, something's not quite clicking. So it was really after that first experience that I realized that my job is to actually work for the people that I work with, not them working for me. I work for them, actually. Mm-hmm. And that's just something I've learned. It took me many years to learn that. And I still work on that every single day. But I have found that I've had stronger teams, lower turnover. That role that I play with my team is critical. And I've been getting more positive feedback over the past, let's say, 10 years that I hadn't ever had before.
Right. Yeah, that's so wonderful. And I think, again, going back to open to that feedback and then actually changing something about it, and you can see the results, right? Like you see people staying in your teams longer. I'm sure work is so much more enjoyable for those people too.
Exactly. And I also, even just being open, like asking people that work for you, like, how am I doing? You know, we tend to give feedback to the people that work for us, but what about asking them, like, how am I doing?
Right.
What else do you need from me? And it just makes it more enjoyable, and we can all just be more open. I don't mean to sound overly sappy about it, but it really does make a difference.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tammy, were you going to say something?
I just couldn't resist chiming in because I feel so passionately about that topic too, Geri, and just really hitting this home for everyone who's listening, who's like, I want to be a global talent leader. I want to get promoted. I want to get to that next level in my career. You're not going to get there unless you did what Geri did, which was listen to where you can be better. Like you're never going to get to that next level unless you start listening to that and like leaning into that. And that was so true for my own journey as well. I learned so much more when I'm listening to where can I improve versus like someone just telling me what I'm doing great and living in my own little echo chamber. So I just couldn't resist because just that being so vulnerable and authentic, like you're going to help people get to the next level in their career on the call because you did that. So thanks for that.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you said that, Tammy. Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, Geri, you're such a wealth of knowledge. I am going to ask you one more question, even though I have a ton more, but in the interest of time, I'll ask one more. So you mentioned like being promoted from an IC to manager, maybe a little too early. Talk to us a little bit more about that and what insights can we glean from that process?
Yeah, great. It happened actually at MTV Networks a number of years ago, because again, I was doing really well as a recruiter. I was like, oh, what's the next thing for me? And then it was like, oh, we'll make you a manager of recruiting. So I was like, okay, great. I had no experience in doing that, no training, had absolutely no idea what I was doing. And it's a totally different kind of job. I was still doing recruiting, but I was also managing the work of others. And I wasn't good at it. I just wasn't. So when I reflect back, and I would give this advice very similar to what Tammy just said, be open to feedback, seek out training opportunities. And this is not even just for talent acquisition. This is a common challenge in any organization when we look at career paths. This is a big topic these days, right? Like, what is the right career path? That transition from being an individual contributor to a manager is a very significant one. And many people are promoted into that role with no skills or experience in how to manage other people. So if I did it all over again, I would have said, I'm not ready for this. I need to take some training courses. I need to get feedback from people. I got better at it over the years, but much later. I mean, much later, you know, again, I'm being very open about that. It took me several years to get to the point where I could say I'm pretty good at it. But if I did the whole thing over again, I would have said to my boss, I am not ready to be a manager. But it's hard at that time. You know, you're young, you're hungry, you want to like grow, you're kind of thinking, well, what else is there? You know? Right. And I think they thought that I was going to be good at it, but not everybody is. I wasn't naturally good at that. It took a lot of effort and coaching and experience to get better at it. So I would just say, be honest and authentic with yourself. And like I said before, it doesn't mean you can't be an amazing. I have a very strong team of people, many of whom who don't oversee team members, and they add tremendous value to the organization. And they're interested in just continuing doing that. It's not the only path.
Well, I think also just kind of bringing up, like, as a more junior person in your career, you oftentimes don't have the confidence, right? But then I also think as women, we often want to be yes people and, you know, just be super positive and optimistic and I can do this. And I think you're really bringing up a great point about advocating for yourself. And if you do feel like it's too early, asking for the training, right? Like, maybe still saying, like, I would love this opportunity. I definitely want to try it out. I don't think I'm ready. What training can you provide, right? So I think there could be ways where you do get some of that development so that it sets you up for success in that role, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Thank you.
Thank you, Geri. So much wisdom. Thank you so much. I'm sure we're going to get other questions for you. So yeah, I would love to move on to Veronica now. Veronica, tell us about your career journey and how you've gotten to head of global TA at Multiverse.
Yeah. So, like Geri, by the way, Geri, I took a bunch of notes, right? In the spirit of like, I've done this for 2 decades and I can still learn, or a reminder, right? Of like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Right. But it was partly why I was so excited to be a part of this conversation, is to continue to learn. And I think during this time, just so nice to hear from other heads of TA. So like Geri, I thought I wanted to be an attorney. And after college, I did a paid internship in a software legal department. And in less than 30 days, I knew that I did not want to be an attorney for corporate law. And that I literally remember sitting in my car, rolling up my windows and like screaming at the top of my lungs because I hadn't talked to any human being, had spent an entire day with legal contracts, right? But what I did love about that opportunity is the company and the space. We were at the intersection of technology and finance. And I was obsessed and fell in love with how quickly technology can shift a stagnant, really important area of people's financing. We were doing online banking back in the day when online banking wasn't a thing. People thought we were going to steal their money and all of this stuff. And that was a long time ago. Some people on the call don't remember times before not online banking. But we were, it was controversial. It was future thinking. And I just ate it all up, right? And as I looked around the organization, like, where did I see myself? And I didn't have enough experience to go into sales and talk to big financial institutions and sell our software. So I ended up in the talent acquisition team. And that was the beginning. And one of the things that I really learned, it was very right out the gate. It was a really great time in the market, by the way. And I was like in an office, 25 years old, with a $30,000 like Visa card to go take my candidates out to golf and all of this stuff, right? It was a great time in the market. I remember our CFO rolled up in a brand new 911 right after acquisition. And this is my idea of talent acquisition right out the gate, right? So I'm like, this is awesome. I'm great at what I do. And then the market went to shit. And I share this story because this is like the thing I think about the most right now during this time in the market is the people that are new, because I lived a really freaking great market right out the gate in my career and had such false expectations of what I had signed up for, right? And felt a lot of deep disappointment in my career, but also really wanted to seek out again, like what I really, really loved was watching how we moved and transitioned and how quickly we moved as a town organization to support these different areas of the business as it shifted. And I ended up kind of chasing and figured out that I really was interested in 3 things: was, the right people, the right timing, and the right product. And trust me, I ended up at a lot of companies. I won't waste your time with a lot of the failures in between, but I ended up moving from LA to San Francisco. I really I was an expert in like the advertising marketing technology space. I found a niche. So unlike Geri, I went into an area of expertise that I became known for and masterful at. And I ended up going to a video programmatic company in the Bay Area. And I felt like this is next. I explored all of the top 3 players in the space. I relocated. I joined as a consultant and that was by choice, because I really wanted to explore the company and make sure that it was a right fit for me and that I was willing to commit my time and sweat and tears sometimes to it. And we did, in 18 months, we IPO'd. I owned and personally recruited a lot of the revenue generation roles across the whole globe. So I really felt like I reported to the CEO. I made sure that I was working on the hardest, most meaningful pieces of our business to get us to IPO. And we ended up selling to Adobe, still part of the Adobe Ad Cloud. And I cashed out on my equity and quit my job. And I traveled. I bought a one-way ticket to Peru to go do the Inca Trail, which, by the way, my friends were like, you know, you can't wear heels on the Inca Trail, right? That's where I was in life. It was a pivotal moment. I'm glad I took a break, because I was on the fast route of like being caught up in Silicon Valley, lots of IPO, lots of a height in my career. It was a lot of people and mentors told me not to do it because I was at the height of my career. It felt like career suicide. And it is absolutely one of the best decisions I've made. I actually launched my own talent agency after that. So before going back in-house, I ran my own talent agency for 6 years. So have that perspective on that end, and was able to have 26 clients within 30 days because of my experience in guiding companies through IPO and successful acquisitions and what it looks like, and was able to have fully remote. This is back in the day, not now. And I ended up being a digital nomad for 15 months. I traveled while running this business and hiring people all across the US and cities I didn't ever even know existed in the US, and Mexico City. And this was way before digital nomad or any kind of remote work was happening. So it really somehow made me ahead of what was coming next. And then finally, I just got really tired of, I became an expert in advertising technology and marketing technology, did really well, but so what? I had a moment in my life of like, who am I bringing along the way? And I started getting really interested in serving in nonprofits and giving back and mentorship programs, and started expanding the business into education, healthcare, sustainability, right? Things that mattered, and kind of leaving a footprint, and ended up also missing being in-house and being a part of the team and not just being in and out or like consulting, and you don't get to be a part of the true reward and that team camaraderie.
Yes.
And I ended up going into education technology, and just fell in love with marrying both my ability to build really strategic, agile talent acquisition teams with actually giving back and having social impact. And that's how I ended up at Multiverse and leading their global talent team.
Wow, what a journey. It sounds like a huge adventure. And I have so many questions for you as well, Veronica. So let's go back to the market. You know, you mentioned like you started in a great market, then there was a crash. We're obviously in a very interesting time right now. So how has it been recently navigating this market as being head of talent, and what's it like you to lead a TA team right now?
What a time to be leading a TA team right now. You know, it feels like throwing out the book, right? Like you cannot have the perspective. I can't have the perspective. I've done this for 20 years and this is the way we have done it. It is putting on your I am new all the time. And I love that, right? Because this means that I'm going to get to stay and play for a much longer, richer career, because it's going to challenge me to have to reinvent myself and reinvent my role, a role that I thought I was masterful at. But the market is demanding something different of me, right? And it's such an opportunity to reinvent the head of TA role. And having that outlook and mindset, I think, is really how I've chosen to navigate leading a TA team. And it's having a lot of agility and flexibility and pivots, and then feeling really comfortable and vulnerable with saying, I'm not sure how to do this yet because I've never been in this situation, but I know that I'm going to be able to have the ability to figure it out and the right network and resources to be able to figure out with the team of really intelligent individuals that we can approach this creatively. And we probably will mess it up a little bit, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there any examples of, things that you are doing really differently right now than maybe a year or two ago?
Yeah, I am on a little bit of a bandwagon of questioning how we do almost everything.
Wow.
And being really uncomfortable along the way, right? And hiring some really incredible people in my leadership team that also hold me accountable and challenge me to rethink the way that I thought it should be done or that I've been doing it. I made sure and intentionally hired people that are very different in thought in the way that they look at certain situations. I hired an incredible head of talent operations that is really masterful at looking at more innovative ways to do things and kind of staying ahead of the curve. It feels deeply uncomfortable almost 90% of the time in my role right now. And it is an adventure, right? I love that you said that it's been an adventure, because that is 100% part of my core values is adventure. And I think, for people on the call, like, I see it as I get this wonderful gift of being in this talent container called talent acquisition. But I also look at it as an adventure of, like, every day may be a different thing. And I get to learn so much, and I get to also learn so much about the human being that I want to be and how I show up. And that's different. That's different than saying, hey, we fill recs and we, have a process and an ATS. How boring is that, right? Like, I don't want to do that job. I want to have a vibrant, rich career, and I want to show up as the human being values align in it, right? And it is not for everybody.
Yeah, that takes a lot of courage, I think. Like, not everyone would surround themselves with people who challenge them in that way. So I applaud you. I think that's great that you're doing that. And I think just adds to the adventure, like you were saying. So talk to me, this will be the last question, again, just in the interest of time, but you mentioned, like, acting as new. So, talk to me a little bit more about that. Can you describe it a little bit more?
Yeah, so what it typically feels like is the stuff that really annoys me, right? So, like, I'll use a very tangible example is this whole AI stuff, right?
Yes.
Like, my initial reaction to it was like, oh no, more systems and more tools and more vendors that are going to sell me shit, right? Like, had a really shitty attitude about it. And, like, it's going to make my, like, just really shitty attitude. And usually if I'm having a really shitty attitude, I give myself, like, no more than 24 hours to process through that feeling. But it typically means that I should look into it, because it's probably challenging me. And it's probably challenging me because it's different and new, and I should get curious about it. So I quickly shift into curiosity of exploring, what is this? And it may not be a thing that we choose to do, but the fact that I've taken the opportunity to become curious and not reject the idea of it, that's typically where, like, how I'm going to continue to be new is by choosing and being intentional and listening to the fact that I'm choosing, like, my initials to reject, and I'm going to choose to be curious. And so we've done a lot of, I've done a lot of, and again, surrounding myself with people that are, like, going to put it right in front of me, and I'm going to get annoyed with, why are you keep talking about this AI? And then finally leaning into the fact that, hey, look, if we don't do this, if we don't look at this, we're going to be left behind. I'm going to be outdated, right? And also eventually landing at, oh my gosh, we are at a pivotal moment, and I either get to choose to be a part of inventing my role in TA and influencing what TA looks like, or I get to be the person that just kind of sat in the shittiness of like, I don't want to do this.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought up AI. It is such a big hot topic, especially with us co-founders here at Talent Collective. We actually have taken it upon ourselves. We're going to do a bunch of demo of AI products in the recruiting space, and we're going to do a workshop on it because we feel like we need to be educated and we need to educate our community on this, and maybe share like the top 5 or the top 10 that we demo, because it is, and it's changing so quickly, and there's so many companies doing so many things. So quick plug on that. There will be more to come from Talent Collective on that. But yeah, I love that you're embracing that, Veronica. It's whether we like it or not, it's coming and it's already here. And I think it's important to use the tools that are coming our way and not get passed over by it. So appreciate you bringing up that as well. And we have a workshop next week on AI. So hopefully everyone can come to that as well. All right. Well, thank you, Veronica. So insightful. Let's transition over to Danielle now. So Danielle, tell us about your background and your journey to Clary.
Sure, absolutely. And buckle up because you could have a full-time job demoing. So I look forward to seeing for you. And if we have the same notes, I feel like mine and Veronica's might be pretty similar. So unlike Miss Veronica, who just spoke, which Geri, Veronica, so good to finally meet you. Both just killing it. Can't wait to continue to learn from you both. I started off my journey in a really terrible market. And so I was at graduating college at the time of the crash. And so as I came into the market, I was the president of the Honor Society, and I was also working for the Downtown Business Association. So I realized that there was some money to be made there. And I started an agency where we placed interns with organizations that couldn't afford to hire full-time talent, but they still needed projects to be done and could embody the internship life. So I did that. And I also was working my day job using my degree, and until it got unbearable, I couldn't do both. So I sold my agency to a firm here in San Diego, and went and they were looking to grow that practice out internally. So it worked out really well. And then I continued on my journey in marketing for about 8 years until my role was offshored, which if anybody's had that happen or been laid off, that's exactly what happened there. So I wasn't going to be moving to Germany, which would have been delightful. But at that point in my career, I wasn't going to do that. And so I took the package and I thought, what do I want to be when I grow up, right? Like, do I want to continue to go down this marketing road where I had fabulous trajectory, but I could feel this pulling back to talent. Like I was at heart a connector, and I loved finding out the why and how someone built their career. And I thought, you know what? I got to find who's the best in that space. And so I found Turning Point Executive Search, which was like a Korn Ferry type alternative. And I reached out to their head and I just said, hey, look, I'd probably be an awesome candidate for you, but I really want to get back into TA. And he was like, let's do lunch. Like, yes, please. They were building out their executive marketing practice. And so I was able to take like what I was good at and what I was passionate about and sort of marry the two. And I came in and I was like, look, I will start at the lowest level humanly possible because I actually want to every nook and cranny of this as I build. And so that's what I did. I came in and I was like, I'll be a junior recruiter, like sign me up, right? And it went from 0 to 60. So I landed after about 7 years in that span. I moved into a director role in time with a fabulous team who are inside of some of the top unicorn organizations. biggest names in tech, auto, like tons of different industries globally. It was a really cool place to be able to learn a lot very quickly. For both of you who have been in agency and everybody on this call, we all know what agency life is like. And it taught me so much in such a finite period of time. And I had a friend who was over at Clary, and I started hearing these CROs that my team was hiring and clients starting to talk about Clary. And I thought, you know what? I guess I'll take the phone call. And it really was the more people that I met here, I could tell they were who they said they were. And I, much like, I don't know if it was Geri or Veronica that said, like, I knew enough to be dangerous, right? I was like, these guys are the reason why I'm about to take a really calculated leap of faith to come in, because they actually didn't have the global head of role at the time to grow into. And so it's been a really awesome journey here to come in and then continue up the trajectory here as they have also grown. You know, we were originally about a 200 person company when I came in, and now we're at almost 9. So it's been a fun one.
Oh my gosh, so much growth. So wonderful to hear all about your background, Danielle. I want to dig into the agency piece first. So how do you think starting an agency served you well as you went in-house, and, tell us about that dynamic a little bit.
Yeah, what was really interesting for me was on the agency side, you come in sort of as an expert in your area, and especially at the level that we were working, we were really considered consultants. And so Ken, who was the founder of Turning Point, would always be really clear that we were there to consult in partnership. Mm-hmm. And so when I transitioned in-house, I was like, so I'm kind of seeing like order taking happening, right? Like, here's a rec, go fill the rec. I have another head, we need to backfill this. And I was like, can I ask a question? Because I really feel like maybe we should be sort of in partnership. And so maybe we could kind of reinvent or rethink how we work across the organization, almost like an agency internally. And so that ended up serving us really well as we have grown here at Clary and sort of thought through the like trust the process and, keeping your side of the street clean and making sure we're one step ahead, all those things that you do when you're in an agency to help serve your partners across the org.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think there is now, personally having seen agency versus in-house, I think there can be a difference in that like service aspect, right? And the partnership aspect, just like what you talked about. Like, an agency, you're like, you're working for every dollar, like you've got to please your clients and your candidates, right? So taking that service mentality in-house, I think is so valuable. Like, yes, you should be like making it easy for people, but also this is a partnership, right? You're not just delivering candidates, right? But you're strategizing on this search, and you know best because you're talking to people all day and you're the one running the search, right? So having that confidence to come back to a hiring manager or leadership to say, you know what, this is actually what I'm seeing, and I think we need to take this approach, right?
Yes, and sort of being curious and working through it together. And hey, what does good look like to you? Because what I see as the bar might be different than what you see as the bar. So like, let's level set at the get-go so that way we have a really productive search and we can nail this quickly.
Yeah, that's great. On our prep call, Danielle, you had mentioned that your new team at Clary was like a little bit hesitant about this woman from agency coming in, and like, is she going to want to be super metrics focused, and like, what's she going to be like? So talk to us a little bit about how you ended up gaining trust with your team and what was your approach with them.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the thing that really resonated the most with the team was that I was curious. I was like, look, I don't have all the answers, right? Some of you guys have been in-house much longer than I have. And I have the agency perspective that you don't have. So like, let's learn this together. And I think back to Geri's point, and Veronica said the same thing about being vulnerable and being open to feedback as even a leader is so important. I ask that in every single one-on-one. What can I do new, better, or different to help you succeed in your week? Oh, we're having trouble with a hiring manager who maybe we're just misaligned with. Okay, let's talk about that. And instead of me going and solve the problem, let me give you kind of the keys to the castle, or let's work through it together so you can learn and then you can go fish.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think that was one. I think the other thing was sort of finding out what the pain points had been previously before I was in seat, right? And saying like, let's work through those, or let's work towards X, Y, or Z. And here's my perspective, but what's your perspective? So really kind of creating that dialogue so it didn't feel top down, but really like we were working on it in tandem, because we were, and we are, and we always will be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, I'll just ask one more question of you, Danielle, too, even though I have a million more. I feel like we could have this conversation all day long. So talk to us a little bit about how your team might be doing things differently today in this new economic landscape. You know, how has your team approached this downturn, and what's new with your team?
Yeah, no, we've really been focusing on talent mobility, like everybody. Veronica, Geri, I was looking at your backgrounds. I think that's really important. So really making sure that that's fed here at Clary, so our internal stakeholders have the opportunity to see what maybe excites them and go try it. That's been big. I think processes around that. So, right, we started off as a 200-person company. There was a point where we didn't necessarily need those processes as robustly as we do now. So building out those things. And then I think really not being afraid to spice it up. I think to Veronica's point, being curious, we celebrate things that we break or are new, better, or different, or maybe that we mess up on. And was so funny because I love that everybody on my team is curious. And someone was poking around in Lever, which is our ATS, and they found like a spicy outreach that somebody sent that yielded the best hire for that role. And I was like, let's bring that to the team meeting. And so it caught that individual contributor off board, or I mean, like they were completely blindsided at the meeting. And I think they were kind of a little tense. And I was like, I love everything about this because you question the system. We're having such a hard time getting folks. We have a delightful amount of inbound, but I think when we do outbound, just like everybody else, it's hard to wade through the noise. And so this spicy email provoked a response from a really killer candidate. And so it was such a great way to celebrate, taking something that maybe they were stepping outside of their box or comfort zone a little bit to do. And it landed really, really well. So
that's awesome. Yes. Challenge the status quo. I love it. Yeah, well, I would love to take some questions from the audience. So as everyone is thinking through your questions, please put them in the chat. We'd love to know what you want expanded on with these three ladies. But in the meantime, until we get any questions in the chat, I'll just ask a broad general question of all three of you. So what advice would you give to aspiring leaders who are looking for maybe that first opportunity to lead, and go into a leadership role?
I'll jump in. I think the thing that has been really interesting, I actually had my boss, who is the chief people officer, reach out to me a couple weeks ago and say, hey, Danielle, I'd love it if you would own this side of the business, really. And it was something that I hadn't done before. And I said, look, I haven't done that before. And I want to be really clear about that. I will go and I will learn it and I will crush it. And I will find mentors and coaches and Slack groups and all of the things, right, to go and investigate. But I want to make sure that we're in alignment on what success looks like. So that way we can work towards that together. And I think when I have somebody that I go to on my team and I say, hey, look, does this interest you? Does it excite you? Is it something you're interested in doing? Having the courageous conversation about what the expectation is, whether it's something you feel like you had said earlier, Geri, like ready for or not, and sort of what the benchmark or metrics are that like success is defined on, and making sure that you're in alignment there. But don't be afraid to have those kinds of conversations. Don't be afraid to ask for it. Don't be afraid to, and if the answer is no or not right now, what is it going to take to get there?
When you had even mentioned, Danielle, that if you needed some help with coaching on something or to learn more about a certain topic to be able to go execute on something, you would even ask your manager, do you have any mentors that I can speak to on this? Do you know any experts that I can go? And then they put you two together and there's somebody else kind of like feeding your development then. So I thought that was a great idea.
There, thankfully my boss isn't afraid to go and ask board members or ask other executives, hey, Danielle noticed that you're connected with this person and she would love an intro to be able to, pick their brain a little bit on X, Y, or Z. And I think, Geri and Veronica both made a nod to this, like surrounding yourself with folks who are sort of at or above your same level, and also not at your same level, because I learn things every day from folks that are telling me like, hey, Danielle, did you learn about this new software? That's how we adjusted our tech stack. Or like, not be afraid to just keep people around you, not that are just like-minded, but that are in a curiosity mode. I think that's sort of what all three of us have said.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I think the one thing that I wish someone had told me before I went into leadership was I wish I would have asked myself earlier on the type of leader that I wanted to be. And because there are different flavors and personas of leaders that you can be in talent acquisition. And for me, one of the things that a lot of folks don't get to see or that I vulnerably share behind the scenes is the reason I am the type of leader that I am isn't just because of the resume or whatever intro bio. It's because of a lot of the work that I've done on myself outside of work and all of the things that I've done to resource myself as a person, not always as a talent acquisition. I think Geri kind of alluded to not just like, don't just go to a workshop on talent acquisition and how to, but it's doing a communication workshop, right? On like how to be a great communicator, having whatever it is for you. For me, it's like having a meditation practice and stuff that is really, I mean, I won't overshare, but really unconventional. And it makes me, people don't see that in my company, you don't need to see that, but it definitely, you will see it and feel it and experience it when I am in the room and in conversations. So I did not know that was going to be what it would be like to be head of TA.
Yeah. I have one thing to add, if that's okay. I mean, such great insights. It's hard to top what Danielle and Veronica just said, but you both took me back to that time when I made that transition. At my earlier self, what I should have said to myself is when you go into a leadership role, it's not about being the smartest person. It's really the opposite of that. So it's very easy to assume when you're given the opportunity to move into a leadership role, well, therefore I'm the smartest, so I know everything and I'm going to be here to teach everything. It's really the opposite. And it took me many years to learn that it's actually about learning from other people. And I wish when I made that transition, I thought about it that way. And, people that were my peers, I suddenly became their manager. I should have had those more vulnerable conversations like, hey, I'd love to learn from you. What kinds of things do you need from me? Instead, I just kind of stepped into the role, assumed the authoritative position. And I wish I did that differently. So I think just I've gotten this advice multiple times is as a leader, you're not supposed to be the smartest person in the room. Absolutely. You're the one that should be listening. So that's advice that has stuck with me for years.
Yes, love that. Oh my gosh, so great. We got a question in the chat that I think will probably be our last question here. So what advice would you give folks who are navigating finding a new role in this market, a new TA role?
I'll jump in. I love this question, and we're actively working against this question so often right now as heads of talent for folks that are reaching out. And I think we all have a heart for how we can help in any way we can. And I think people come from that place innately. So don't be afraid to take a vulnerable position and say, hey, I'm looking. Put it on your LinkedIn. Call everybody you know. Like, people want to help people. Truly, I think that's at the core. And so don't be afraid to scour a LinkedIn network and find somebody who works there and have a good word put in for a referral, right? We all navigate referrals every day. I think that stuff is absolutely paramount. I think there's only so many roles open, so don't beat yourself up, because it's really easy to get into the mode of, gosh, I've sent out 1,000 resumes and I'm just not getting a response, and you go there, and figuring out a way how to pull yourself out of that and just keep plugging, because it's a numbers game. Something will hit. And if there's any way I can help, please reach out to me.
That's great advice. We just not too long ago hired a technical recruiter in my group. We had a lot of competition. Obviously, a lot of people have been laid off from the various different organizations, so it wasn't like there was a shortage of talent. So what I found myself doing, I was quite candid with candidates to say, my goodness, there's so much competition. I want to hear from you on what your that sort of special sauce is. And you just, when you ask certain questions like that, I said, I need you to help me. I said, because there's 1,000 candidates. I'm like, help me help you. There's 1,000 candidates. Everyone seems great. You seem great. What makes you different? So that's something that I use to help us make a good hire. It may seem obvious, but I encourage you to think about, you have competition. So talk about those special things that you bring to the table. And I find that sharing about behavior is really helpful, because like most, technical skills is one thing. It's really the how you show up part that I think people want to hear more about. How do you show up day one? What does that look like? You know what I mean?
Yeah, Geri, that's such a good point. And that actually what are you doing with your time right now?
Yes.
And this is such a neat opportunity. For how often do you hear, or even myself have said, I would love to take a course on X, Y, and Z and don't have time for it. This is the time. And this is the answering the Geri question around what makes you special. And what makes you special could be that you take this time as an opportunity to be learning, right? And mastering your craft, and like being creative around how you're resourcing and tooling yourself without having a leader to tell you or instruct you to do it, or a role to perform. And that is a standout candidate.
Wow, that was such great advice, Veronica. I think that is absolutely what everyone should be doing right now, finding opportunities to develop and learn and grow. And yeah, as a hiring manager, when you hear, you're like, okay, this person's going to walk in with some new ideas and they're going to be sharp already, right? So really, really great. Thank you all so much for coming today and being a part of this awesome virtual fireside chat with these three very, very impressive ladies. So thank you again to Geri, Veronica, and Danielle for being here. I know I've learned a ton from you, and your experience is just so wide and wise and just, filled with tons of nuggets of wisdom. Again, I could have talked to you all day. You're such an inspiration. So thank you again. Just want to close us out with highlighting a few things for Talent Collective, a few upcoming events that we have. So we're actually in the process of coordinating 2 more of these events. So they're virtual events, they're free fireside chats. One is going to be on November 1st at 11 a.m. Pacific. Save the date. And then the other one is the end of November, so November 30th at 11 Pacific. And then that one is going to be on the topic of how to provide more value during times of, slow recruiting. So definitely bookmark those dates, keep an eye on our social media and everything so that you can stay up to date on all the events that we have. For anyone that is a Talent Collective member, I mentioned this earlier, but we have an AI workshop with Amanda Hale next week on Tuesday at noon Pacific. You do not want to miss this, so please be there. There will be a recording posted to Circle after if you can't, but I think this is one that everyone has just been dying to see. So please come to that if you can. If you aren't a Talent Collective member, we would love for you to join us. So just a quick overview, we have 2 options for membership. One is a remote membership that includes at least 2 workshops a month. Sometimes there's even more. Participation in these really intimate peer groups that we're very excited about. And then we have a job board, we have resources and tools on our Circle site as well that are exclusive for members. And then we have a full membership, which is for Bay Area, people that live in the area, and we have in-person networking events once a month. So would love for everyone to join, and thank you again to our speakers. Really enjoyed having you here, and we look forward to your continued success. So thank you.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.